Aloha, I'm Malia Zimmerman, and this is News Behind the News. Sometimes as a Republican, Republicans will say, well, I want to get my message out to the media, and through the media. So today, I wanted to welcome two people from the GOP. One is Representative Fontaine, and he gives the unique perspective of being new in the legislature, and also Jonah Ka'ahawai, who is the head of the GOP in Hawaii. I want to welcome you to the show.
Thanks
for coming.
Good to be here.
Very
so
good.
Tell me about yourself, George. You're Representative Fontaine. You're a brand new legislator. You're from Maui.
Yes.
And you were in law enforcement.
That's correct. I actually am a retired police captain from the Maui Police Department. I served 25 years in the force there and had a great career in the police department. I also owned a business at the same time with my wife and my sister-in-law who ran it during the day while I was off being a police officer. They kept the business going. We had an internet providing business called Maui Gateway, and we had that for 14 years. So I have a really, we could talk the whole show about my past, but I have a very well-breathed background in a variety of different subject matters and topics, and it's been really helping me out at the legislature.
So you're coming into this whole legislative thing as a new Republican member, a minority member. You're one of 8 in the legislature that's from the House. So what do you think about this whole new experience?
I love it. I mean, I loved my police job, but I think I love this job even more. I mean, I look forward to getting in. I'm usually in bright and early before everybody else, and I usually stay until it's dark outside, and I love the whole process. I love being able to ask tough questions, especially at the committee level when we start looking at the various bills and being able to draw out some other different kinds of perspective on some of these different legislatures, and I've been able to do that and actually been able to steer the direction perhaps of the discussion and where a piece of legislation will go. So, and being on 5 different committees, I mean, I get to see most of all the bills. I don't sit on finance, but I'm in labor, public safety, judiciary, transportation, and education. So sometimes I run between meetings, sometimes they happen at the same time, which is like trying to be in 2 places at once, but it's like I start my day and I look at my watch and I go, I can't believe the day is already gone. So it's a lot of fun.
So there's 51 members in the House. There's 8 Republican members.
Yes.
And so what you're saying is you have to go on several committees to make sure they're covered.
Absolutely.
So Republicans are on the committee as well.
Right.
And I know in the Senate, of course, Senator Sam Slum's the only Republican.
Yes.
So he's on 15 committees.
Yes.
So he'll say you have it easy.
Yeah, he would. And when he has his caucus, he sits in the room by himself.
Right. I know.
Yes.
We always ask him if he's lonely, but he says no, he has a good staff. So that's great.
Well, and he has a tremendous attitude about the whole thing. I've never seen him complain or be down about the situation that he's in. He takes it to a positive level. He does what he has to do to get the job done, and he does it. I mean, he gets out there, he's letting his constituents know with his weekly newsletter, and he gets to get in the paper all the time, and he's doing it, and I think he's providing a real good perspective up there, and I'm glad he's there.
Jonah, I'm so glad you came today. I've been trying to arrange a show with you and the head of the Democrat Party for a long time.
Absolutely.
And they keep not returning calls and not showing up. So
sure.
I'm glad that even though you don't look like Dante Carpenter,
I'm
glad you're on the show too.
Thank you.
But anyway, so tell me about the Republicans in Hawaii. You're the head of the party. You've gone through, you've gone through what, 2 elections or one? One election.
So far.
Okay. And so tell me about the party and the kind of candidates that you look for and what the challenges are.
Well, the party overall, I mean, we're very fortunate to have examples like George, who has come, who worked hard in the first election in 2008 and decided that his community was important enough to give it a try. And I think what we saw in the 2008 compared to the 2010 election cycle was just the excitement. There was just a really big excitement. The de jure race, the special election, really helped us to get a lot of people out. We had 97 Republican candidates in the primary, which dwarfs anything that has happened before. We were just looking for people out there who are concerned about their community with the taxes, with same-sex marriage being on everyone's minds right now, and all these different kinds of issues that really impassion the conservatives in the state of Hawaii. It's been, I can't say it's been easy, but it's been easier to talk to people out there because it's top of mind now. And thanks to Governor Abercrombie, there's a lot more people who are conscious about what's going on in our community with pensions, and I'm sure we'll talk to George a lot more about that, but with pension tax on the rise and other taxes on the rise right now, and the possibility of a general excise tax increase. I mean, there's a lot going on, and it's an exciting time for change in the state of Hawaii, and we believe the Republican Party will be a massive conduit for people to see change in our community.
George, okay, that's a good point about change or being a conduit to bring out some issues. Give me some examples when people say, how can you possibly, as either 1 in the Senate or 8 in the House, how can Republicans make a difference? Tell me some of the ways that Republicans are making a difference every day down at the legislature.
Well, I think yesterday is a perfect example. I offered 3 floor amendments yesterday, basically including language in these tax and fee increases that the Democrats were proposing to say that we're actually going to use the money for what we say we're going to use it for. And for a lot of people, they don't understand that. They say, oh, well, we're going to raise these fees so that we can fix the potholes and we can repair the roads. Well, what's happened in the past is they'll do that, they'll raise the money, and then they'll go to the highway fund and they'll rate it to help try to balance the budget, so the money never gets actually spent on repairing the roads. So I tried to insert some language in each one of these bills on these fee increases to say that you're actually going to use it for what you say you're going to use it, and it's in writing. And the effort was twofold. One, accountability and being truthful with the public. And the other is to say, if you vote against this, then you're not being honest. And you're saying, well, we may use the funds for this or we may use the funds for that. And their only response to it was, oh, technical flaws with the amendment, or the amendment could be repealed in a future legislature body. So they wouldn't commit, but it was okay because we got that message out, and it got a lot of press coverage. I mean, people really looked at that, because I don't think people really understand that. Our debates of what we do, even though we're 8, I mean, we get up and we debate the issues. All of us in the caucus are out there providing an alternative point of view. It's going on record. People can see it, and they know that it's not just a one thought process of one party or one ideal. We have conservatives as well as liberals, and we're bringing out that conservative values to the legislature and showing people there is a way to reduce the size of government, and reduce spending versus, it's like I think what Representative Ward said in the quote today, it's like, we don't have a budget problem, we have a spending problem, and we need to cut back on the spending. So we as a body, where the Democrats did not bring this out, we actually came up with a caucus bill. We had a plan. These are the areas we wanted to focus on. The Democrats didn't come up with any of that. Nobody has any idea what they have in mind or plan, but we came out as a body and we were able to do that. So sometimes being the minority and being only 8 is a good thing because we can work together collectively and come up with a vision and then get it out there. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're seeing, and I think it's really working, and people are starting to pay attention now and wake up and going, wow, there is some really bad stuff out there.
Well, I think you bring up a good point about the rates, because I don't know how many people realize that you can get charged a gas tax, for example, which is, I think, where you have the highest in the nation on gas tax, 60-something cents a gallon, I think 62 cents. And then that will go into a fee that's supposed to repair the roads, like you said, but then it gets rated and goes into the general fund. And that you can see that over and over and over again, where the special funds, the soda tax that they want to raise is already 6 cents a can and bottle. They want to add another 10 cents per each one, and that money just gets rated. It gets right off the top. So it's not for recycling necessarily. It's not for bettering the environment. It goes right back into the general fund when they need money. Right. And then same with the 911 fund as well. So how are you getting that message out besides debate? Are you talking to, for example, you're from Maui?
Well, I have my own show on Alelo. In fact, if you folks like to tune in, it's called The Fontaine Factor, where we try to do a new show every 2 weeks to bringing out the good and the bad and the ugly and other issues of things that are happening in Hawaii.
That's a good name for a show, Good, Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah, yeah. And,
it's perfect for the legislature.
And we have I personally have a monthly newsletter that I do. We have a separate independent website. It's not a political campaign website. It's an independent site where we're doing lots of videos and YouTubes, and we have our newsletter on there. We do a lot of blogging. We do as much as we possibly can in terms of press releases, and we spoke off air a little while ago about this effort that I'm trying to be more proactive with helping people that are dealing with mortgage foreclosures with Bank of America. And we've been proactive, and I'm actually lending my staff to trying to help the people in the community that are having issues with Bank of America. So we've reached out to try to do that, and we have a special access line set up with Bank of America to take our inquiries, and we have the people fill out a form. So those are the kinds of positive things. It's not all about, attacking the other side. I'm putting myself out there and saying, these are the positive things that need to be done. And the others in the caucus are doing the same as well, to varying degrees. But basically we're saying, this is what we're doing. This is what we want to accomplish. This is something positive. We want to deal with homelessness. We want to deal with people that are dealing with foreclosures. We are trying to tackle the real issues and not trying to get bogged down in a negative campaign or a debate. It's about how we as people are bringing our experience, our heart, our soul to this job beyond what happens on the floor. We are true leaders within our community.
And Malia, I think where we've never had this before, there's a collaboration between the Republican Party and the caucus. And whatever information that they send our way, I mean, I know they put out the positive spin. We do more of the truth telling. Mm-hmm. And we're getting it out to the press. We're getting it out to our party members. And so on a weekly basis, I mean, there are thousands and thousands of people out there that are being notified about what's going on in the efforts of these good people and these community heroes, I'd like to call them, what they're doing in the legislature to have balance.
So what do you think some of the highlights are, I guess, for the Republicans this year in terms of the legislative fights or?
Well, obviously the interaction between the governor and Barbara Marumoto was
Representative Barbara Marumoto, right?
Representative Barbara Marumoto. That was fun to watch.
And it was on YouTube. It's basically it was on KSSK and
yeah, it's gone
everywhere.
Yeah,
We've had it.
It's statewide, and
yep.
And I hear from friends in the mainland going, "Wow, your governor is got his hands full with your minority caucus."
And I think that was over the pension tax.
It's over the pension tax,
right.
And the governor trying to justify that he will not be affecting regular people, a regular pension, and we know that's farce. Mm-hmm. That's a farce, and Representative Marumoto did an excellent job. I mean, she stood her ground, and it's something that is an issue that is intimate to everybody in the state of Hawaii. We all have kupuna that we're looking out for, and so that's, I think, is one of the major highlights that we've had so far. And we'll have many more. Mm-hmm. With crossover just happening today, and with everything turning over, we'll have a lot more. So, and there's issues like interlock that are going on, and that George will go a little more in depth mm-hmm. on that, but it's something that's very important to people. If your license has been taken away, it's been taken away for a reason.
For a DUI.
For a DUI.
Right, right. And now there's Democrat proposal, Representative Joe Suki is trying to give people back their licenses if they've had a DUI, or is it repeat offenders?
It's people that have had their license permanently revoked. Mm-hmm. I'm not exactly sure if he's actually the author, but he seems to be the most vocal on the floor in defending that piece of legislation. Mm-hmm. And it's just bad. I mean, if you've lost your license permanently, now we're going to go back and try to go back in history and change a permanent revocation. And this is for people who have been arrested multiple times for DUI, and in some cases may have actually hurt somebody or crashed or whatever the case may be. And now he wants to go back and pardon these people by allowing them to do it. But I think basically to reapply to get their license and have this interlock device installed on their car so that they breathe into it before they can start the engine. Mm-hmm. But aside from that aspect of it, of the fact that it's going back and bringing back people who've lost their licenses permanently, the legislation doesn't have any language in it on the process of how that would be done or whether or not they would have to go back and have an eye test, and take a road test again for these people who haven't driven for many, many years. It's just like they can walk in and just go get the permit. And we can't do that. I mean, there's got to be other steps in place to ensure that these people are qualified, that they're mentally and physically healthy, and that they, like every other driver, when you go in and apply for a license, you have to meet certain criteria, and none of that is in the legislation.
So this is one of the issues that you've been debating with the Democrats, specifically Representative Suki, who's from Maui as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So, and I'm not exactly sure why he seems to be so passionate about this. I can only speculate, but he's been the one who has gotten up and spoken time and time again in defense of this legislation, and even Representative Hart has somewhat sided with me that this is flawed and we shouldn't put this through, but it's just managed to pass third reading and off it goes. So we're hoping that it's going to stall. And it's been, like I said, having my police experience, especially like with the electric gun issue with the liquor inspectors, I've been able to get up and tell that perspective of why, explaining the continuum of force and how this is an intermediary control weapon and should be only used in near deadly or deadly force situations. It's not something that you just want to give to a liquor inspector.
Oh, this is another bill.
This is another bill.
Another bill.
That is just bad. And I'm surprised that, again, it's gone this far. It's just a really bad idea.
There's a lot of legislation that people would consider bad going through the legislature,
yeah,
including
there is.
Taxes. I mean,
yes.
Going back to the pension tax. Governor Abercrombie was promising not to raise the general excise tax, and he was kind of saying, Governor Lingle cut all these programs, and kind of criticizing her for what she did during her time. But now he's there, and he has to look at cuts, he has to look at the reality, and also he's proposing these tax hikes. And these are going through the legislature. I mean, Jonah, what's your perspective here? Because you went through this campaign with Lieutenant Governor Iona and Neil Abercrombie, and now what do you think about what's coming true in terms of his promises versus...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a typical Democrat ploy where you promise the world and, you can renege on any promises. I think, personally, there's a process that needs to happen that we're seeing with the Democrats that, they'll talk about these little things they won't be able to deliver, because the big thing that I think that we all know, and it's interesting that Calvin Say and the leadership in the House that are saying, Speaker Say is saying that they're against the GET tax increase.
Right,
but we know that's what the unions want. So the question is how are they going to maneuver having these small taxes not pass so that they can go for the big boy, which is the general excise tax. So, I mean, we're putting the message out right now, Malia, and as I hope your viewers will understand that it's coming, the increase in the general excise tax, even though polls show 68% of the people here in the state of Hawaii are against it, that's what they're shooting for. And the process will play itself out because, pension tax is a little bit, soda tax is a little bit here and there, but it has, it won't help balance the budget. The general excise tax, on the other hand, will keep everybody satisfied and give the unions and their workers big fat pay increases.
Now, one of the issues that came up about trying to balance the budget and raise money for the state and all this kind of thing was gambling. And another bill yesterday passed through the Senate about gambling, but I hear that it's maybe not doing that well in terms of surviving this session. George, what was your thoughts on gambling and if it will survive?
Well, they tried to establish one casino in Waikiki and as a revenue source. And as we all know, it isn't. It actually hurts an economy more than it does. I mean, just take a look at California that has gambling, and they're bankrupt. So if it was the great savior, we would have seen it. There's a lot of issues to dealing with, social services and things like that will be expanded because of gambling. But anyway, it was killed on second reading on the floor, and it actually started with the debate from the Republicans actually going up, and me speaking, I started it off and saying this is why it's bad. And then all of a sudden, and a couple more Republicans, then some Democrats started getting up. And then it was like a domino effect. All of a sudden, it was like they all started to fall. And they panicked, they recessed the session, they tried to regroup, they went back, they tried to stop the momentum, they brought us back into session, and then 4 more of them came over. So we ended up with 28. I believe was the final vote against gambling.
So it was actually killed on the floor.
It was actually killed on the floor.
That's not that. It doesn't happen that often, right?
That's the first time I've ever seen it. Of course, I'm a freshman, but it was the first time I've actually ever seen that happen. So it was amazing. But again, we started the lead on that, and I got up and gave them my whole police perspective on it, and then everybody else started to chime in, and then one by one, they started to go, and it got killed. But bingo did pass. They're trying to do a bingo on Hawaiian homelands, and I'm not sure where that's going to happen. That was the other one. I hope that's going to die a horrible death as well too, because we don't want to need it. Really need it. The one thing I wanted to speak about with this budget issue before we run out of time is that, our minority leader had requested from the finance chair, Marcus Oshiro, to get access to the worksheets that they're working off in terms of designing the budget. And at this point, they've refused to give it to us. We want to come up with an alternative budget, but it's very difficult unless you know what the real numbers we're working with. And their response has been, well, that information is available elsewhere. You can get it wherever. And that's not entirely true. We don't have the specific information. So, you want to talk about, being open and working in a bipartisan fashion. It's not happening. It's very difficult for us to design something, or and we got slammed on the floor yesterday. Well, if you guys don't want to raise taxes, well, you better come up with alternatives. We'd love to.
Yeah.
But you got to give us the numbers. We got to have something to work with here, folks. I mean, I can't design a budget unless I know what you're working off of and what the governor wants. So it's very hard. I mean, that our hands are tied with.
Yeah.
Well, Representative Ward last session, I believe, came up with an alternative budget that he unveiled, and so he said that he was going to work on that this session. But you're saying that you can't do it right now.
Not unless we get the information.
Yeah.
It's really difficult. I mean, we have worked up some general ideas, but unless we have some specifics on exactly what Governor Abercrombie is proposing with his budget and what Marcus is working with his committee, we need to know that, and then we'll take that information and we'll come up with some alternative proposals. But to try to make something up would just make us look like fools, so we're not going to go down that path. We want to make sure that we get accurate information and that we're able to design a budget that actually can work.
Giving people, go ahead, Jim.
No, I was just going to say there's some core things that we've always proposed, and Governor Lingo has proposed, like deferring tax refunds, which we know if you defer it a month, I mean, you can have a $250 million savings from just having it deferred a month. So there are things basically that you can do that is at the disposal of the current administration as well as Marcus Oshiro and the rest of the committee. But interesting that they're putting tax increases before something very simple like this. What about have that as far as other things, but they're just not even putting that on the table, and I think that's frustrating for all of us on the more fiscal accountability side and efficient government side.
Well, let's look at the budget for a second. From what I understand, it's $23 billion over a 2-year period. That's what the proposal is, right? And you have a deficit amount of anywhere between $844 million, $866 million, up to $1 billion, depending on who you talk to. So what's the situation? Is that true? And from what you know,
it's even worse because the governor is actually looking at expanding government. And you take a look at the whole energy authority thing that he wants to do. All of those things have costs, and you can't be implementing new programs. You can't be going back to the unions and saying, okay, we're going to do the 60-40 on your medical again, where it was 50-50 before. That was $18 million out the door. We had to approve that yesterday. That was $18 million right there we just spent, just so that we could take care of the unions that supported an election. That's what I believe would happen. And
so just to give a little more explanation on that, it's the medical coverage that the state offers the state employees, and whether it's 60-40 or whether it's 50-50, and he raised it to 60-40 so that the taxpayers are covering 60% now instead of 40.
Instead of 50.
Instead of 50, right.
Yes,
sorry.
That's correct. So, those kinds of maneuvers, and then what that's going to cost down the road if he keeps that in play. He's saying he's going to go back to the unions and ask them for a 5% reduction in pay. I've never seen that happen before, where we actually see somebody have a salary go down. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's pretty shocking that we're banking on that, because I know the unions are going to be kicking and screaming about that. They don't want to give up their salaries. They've already been dealing with the furloughs and everything else, and now we're going to say, well, we'll end the furloughs, but we'll give you a 5% pay decrease. So.
Right. We're going to see what happens. Well, but the unions are pretty strong. And in fact, with the private unions lately, we've seen them have some victories with Hawaiian Electric getting a big settlement for what it seems that they were happy. And then you have the hotel unions being happy. So we'll have to see if the public unions also have a victory this year as well, right?
Yeah.
So what are some of the other legislation? You have the tax hikes, the pension tax, the bottle tax, the alcohol tax, the interlock break or the interlock breathing situation. You have the gambling. What are some of the what is the bill that maybe shocked you the most this year? Is there one that stood out and you went, oh my goodness, what an idea?
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
Jonah,
you know what?
too.
Yeah, maybe Jonah could start out. I mean, there were so many that I looked at and I shook my head at. You know, one of the ones that I think is the viewers should be aware of is there's this whole abortion bill that's come, or not abortion bill, adoption bill that went through, which basically shifts the expectation of privacy from natural birth mothers to having none and actually having to file an affidavit to keep their name private. And that has just untold consequences down the line. Now you're going to have women who were considering maybe giving their baby up for adoption to take the abortion route, because then they are for sure guaranteed privacy. The way it's written now, they have to go back every 10 years and apply to keep their names private. You know, and so this is a real shift. Fundamentally, what we've treated young women that decide to give up their baby and want to go on and live their life but don't want to have an abortion. Now they're going to start thinking like, gee, you know, maybe it's just easier for me to get the abortion. And that's not a good situation. I'm very concerned about that one.
Well, Jonah, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up the show?
Well, it's just interesting in this legislative session, not that it doesn't happen every year, but the focus is always away from what's important. This year, the importance is jobs, decreasing government spending, and we took up a whole bunch of issues, and we're continuing to focus on issues that are not in
civil unions and all the
list goes on and on.
Right. The death with dignity and
all those
things that aren't fiscally related, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
So we continue to go over things in the legislature that that's not why people elected these representatives into office, and it's disturbing, but we understand where the electorate is, and we continue to forge forward with good representation like George and other talents that we have currently in the Republican Party in the legislature.
All right, George, if the people want to keep track of what you're doing at the legislature, what's your website?
It's repfontaine.ning.com. Repfontaine.ning.com is my independent website. And you can always email me at repfontaine@capital.hawaii.gov.
And Jonah, you're at Hawaii GOP?
HawaiiGOP.com.
All right. Well, it's been a fast show and very interesting. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
I'm Malia Zimmerman. This has been News Behind the News. Aloha.